starting. Let me go.
And,
It's like right in Kate's face. There we go. Better?
so I had to go up there for a board meeting last weekend.
Which is it the AMC?
This is the
Let me see
Randall.
if this is working.
actually.
Oh, cool.
I
I used to work at the AMC.
Oh, really?
When I was a teenager, yeah.
At one of the huts?
Yep.
Where did you
Well,
work?
I actually worked at Cardigan
Oh, great.
for a little bit. And
cousin
then, of course,
worked
you
at
go
Cardigan.
and work at all different, you know, you can kind of work your way around the system.
Yeah.
The Cardigan was fun.
It's working.
My cousin was at Cardigan. Yeah, so we're right on the side of Manhattan. And we've got a couple of little cabins right near Madison Hut, fairly close to Madison Hut.
Yeah.
And then 100 miles of trails. So we just celebrated our 100th anniversary in 2005, I think. So we've been around for a long time. So anyway, it's a cool thing. But I was up there, and of course there was still 2 feet of snow, so it wasn't like it wasn't quite.
You
as,
just went back into
into
the winter.
Exactly.
Really? Oh man.
Exactly. So I
No,
was,
you need to be going like that to Georgia.
yeah, it was definitely headed in the wrong direction.
I know. I was so surprised at the NASPA conference. And it was sort of nice. I was thinking we were going to get better weather than we did. And, you know, New Orleans,
Yeah.
you know, and so then.
We are?
So the first day was really beautiful, and the next days were kind of cold. It was like, oh,
I really need this. I really need this.
and then I brought like clothes that were too warm, so it's not too much, so I was like freezing.
I had a trip like that to New Orleans and ended up having to buy a sweater. I was so cold.
Like, what?
Kate and Sarah, we are live.
Okay.
So I'm going to turn that off from my computer. Log it down.
Whoa.
Hello.
Technology. I'll tell you what. I brought Tootsie Roll. If you want Tootsie Roll candy, or if you want Tootsie Roll pop. I don't know. Okay.
He's trying bribery.
See, the lawyer is the one who's going to give me the trouble.
Cross-examination.
Yeah, you have to have like a yellow pad of paper or something to be taking all your legal notes. Yeah.
Do I have time to run and get a little more water?
I think so.
Do you need anything, Sarah?
Yes. I would love some. Thank you.
My people at home, if you're watching. Oh.
You have 2 viewers.
Hey, 2 people.
Okay, I'll be right back down.
Wait, are the protocols in the way of the viewers?
I don't think so. I don't know. Zeke can let us know.
Now they're not.
I mean, I don't have a problem.
Sponsored by
Tootsie Roll.
Tootsie Roll.
This integrated thesis defense. So I gotta make sure it's integrated project, right?
You can call it a thesis defense if you'd like.
Mine basically looks like.
You're now at 5 viewers, by the way.
So both have. I think my partner even canceled a meeting to.
Aw.
Sorry, Katie. Yeah.
Oh, Katie has some very pointed feedback about your jacket.
Does she? Oh,
Yeah.
that it's a pointy jacket.
It says, "Yay, it's working. Good luck. That jacket, though." ...
That jacket, though.
Mhm.
The only person I've heard from that's coming is Victoria. So.
Okay.
So shall I leave this open for another minute?
You want? Yeah. Make sure that I'm actually on the right thing for moving stuff. Cool. Prezi.
Mm-hmm.
Not for the faint of heart.
I like Prezi though.
I did too. I mean, I used it like when I was teaching, and I use it. I like to use it in presentations. when I presented at NASPA, one of my colleagues and I presented with keynote, and I'd never really used that before. That one's really neat. It has a lot of really cool like animations and stuff. This one you need like decay.
We'll close it momentarily. Oh, I saw him upstairs.
Oh, yeah, that was kind of intimidating.
Yeah.
And that one was live streamed too. Like, we were mic'd up, and that was like the whole thing. So I was kind of.
You sound like you can talk today. That's good.
Yeah, I also forgot my rubber band.
Oh.
So sorry, dentist. But no, much better today. Yesterday was nice because I did nothing except for like really finish this and relax, and then we went to the Red Sox game and where I started yelling.
I saw that. Did you stay till the end, I hope?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, because it was rough in the middle there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
So I mean, I'm ready to go whenever y'all are.
All right.
Why don't we close that so that we don't bother folks? And actually, I think I'll open this up a little bit more because if the door is closed, it's not quite as much of a wind tunnel.
Check it out, check it out, check it out, check it out. All right. So, welcome.
Does Sarah, have you gotten the what we're doing? Bit. Yes. Good.
Roughly.
Sorry, I just wanted to.
Thank you.
Good? Cool. Good. All right. So, welcome to my integrative thesis defense. My name is Crig, Vitamin, as the three of you know, and people at home watching or in their offices watching. Hey. I encourage social media during this at CrigVidAdmin or hashtag CrigDefense. My thesis, my integrative, is titled Social Media, a tool to impact student development and increase student engagement. And it's a really catchy title, I know, but a lot of my interests and focus in higher education are on social media and how it affects student development and student learning. I'm second year, and I am a GA for Center for Health Promotions, Marketing, and Evaluations, as well as the Not Ready for Bedtime players. I'm also the social media manager for UMatter at UMass, as well as studentaffairs.com. I also do social media for the technology knowledge community through NASPA, and I am also the social media coordinator for the NASPA Region 1 conference. So I like doing this stuff, and I have a lot of feelings about it, which is why we are here. I believe strongly in social media and how it has impacted our culture and our students' lives, and especially the way that they learn and develop. In my integrative, I point out my main problem being UMass Amherst not being the greatest at engagement when it comes to social media, and needing some form of redevelopment of their strategies when it comes to utilizing social media, as well as not using it to its real full potential that I see it being used, and my colleagues have been using it, and research has shown it to be proven effective. So in my integrative, I come up with a few concepts that I'm really using to really drive the entire paper. One of those is that currently I view colleges as existing in two different realities. Over the last 10 years, social media and digital technologies have really taken off and have consumed our culture, and a massive world culture as well, which means they've also consumed our students' lives. So I see that our students not only exist in a physical reality, the desks and chairs and the human beings they interact with daily, but at the traditional campus setting, but they also exist in a digital way. They experience college in a digital reality as well. And I explore that to recognize that students are developing relationships differently online. They're learning from each other in different ways, and I'll be exploring that later as well. I also explore the concept that involvement and engagement are two separate concepts. One can lead to the other, involvement can lead to engagement, but they are separate, and they can have different approaches which can affect how you utilize your social media. And finally, I look at how social media are for relationship building. Plain and simple. Like social media is social. It's social. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be creating connections, creating collaborations, creating relationships. So that's how I go through a lot of the setup of the paper. And in order to do some distinctions between involvement and engagement, I utilize Aston and Baxter-McGolden. Aston's theory of involvement looks at involvement as a way that connects students with its community. It's a way, it makes connections. It gets students to events, and it gets them recognizing the things going on in their community. Whereas when I look at engagement from a social media perspective, I wanted to use Baxter-McGolden's self-authorship, which looks at engagement as a means of developing meaning-making in relationships, and how relationships can develop meaning-making and vice versa. So really looking at those two concepts from those 2 points of views throughout the paper. To put it visually, I made a nice visual of this with some arrows and some dotted lines. I look at social media efforts, this being the social media efforts, this being student audience, how they're trying to reach their student audience. And from an involvement approach, this is where I think a lot of institutions are. UMass Amherst is in this involvement approach, where it's good to have a presence. That's basically the bare essential presence. We push information out to our students. We say, hey, this thing is happening. Hey, this thing is happening. Okay. That's where it ends. And that's where this dotted line kind of comes in. Where I see engagement existing is that it's almost an invitation. It's a way to get students to collaborate and really create a relationship with the institution's social media presence. It's more than just having a presence, it's actually being active with it and engaging your student population. Because when you create an engagement with your students, you're creating a relationship with them. And when you do that, you have a little bit of a return on investment, which is a nice business term. I know I didn't do my undergrad degree in business, English, but return on investment is a really great thing when it comes to social media, because it develops your followership. It develops trust. It develops your brand in a lot of ways. And return on investment is necessary because when you put time and money and effort into something, you want a return. And on social media, you build that return by building your audience. You build a trusting audience. So I have a quote from Sandlin and Pena that states, student perceptions of its institution's authenticity on social media plays a major role in whether the student will interact with or become involved. This is where I take my turn of discussing my problem with some social media efforts at UMass Amherst. Whereas I blew this word authenticity. It was better when I practiced it. I blew the word authenticity to outline it, because I find especially one effort of UMass social media to be very inauthentic, and that is this campaign, the I Am UMass Proud campaign. It looks great. I think it's clean. It's clear what they're wanting to do. Maroon is everywhere. Yeah. However, the quote is my problem. We rank 3rd in Massachusetts in research funding from the National Science Foundation, behind only Harvard and MIT, attributed to Ju Won Yun of class of 2018. My problem with this is he didn't say that. And it's quoted as him saying that. I took this and I took a couple of these others, which are on pamphlets. I grabbed one, and showed them to my students, and they laughed because they can tell that he's not saying that. This is actually straight from the UMass website, verbatim, copied and pasted. As is this one. It's a great looking kid, maroon everywhere again. The quote is straight from the website. What this shows me is the university doesn't actually care why the students at UMass Proud. Because a lot of institutions have actually used students to tell their stories, to tell, to utilize social media in ways that actually engages with their real, authentic experience on the campus. And that's what students want to see. But this shows a perception that UMass wants the public to see, not the actual student's perspective. So that's my main problem here. And with that, I wanted to understand a little bit more about how students utilize social media on campus here and in their lives. So designed a survey with my faculty advisor and one of our PhD students, Juan. It was his birthday yesterday, so if he's watching, he won his birthday yesterday. We designed a survey to look at a lot of things, honestly. We wanted to gauge some campus climate questions. We wanted to gauge exactly what students are wanting to share, what they are less willing to share, and really look at this from a developmental point of view as well, looking at student development through social media use. And so we asked some pointed questions that have to do with self-authorship and social media. We kind of guised them in a way that makes them look like they are questions that you would just hear on a daily basis, I guess. But they were actually self-authorship questions. So I want to share some of those results with you. I can't share all of them, but here are the ones that I found interesting. 79% of students are utilizing different social networking sites to reach different audiences. This is really important when it comes to creating marketing strategies and social media strategies, because what you try to do for Facebook is not necessarily what's going to work for Twitter, not going to work for Instagram, or work for, because students aren't using them in that way. They're not looking at them as the same exact thing. They find them to be useful in very different ways. I mean, I do that in my personal life as well. My Facebook is a lot of friends and family. Twitter is very much professional, and we're creating my professional network. And then my Instagram is basically all music. So very different identities happening in different social media networks, and we're seeing that in our students, which also has a lot of impact when it comes to looking at this from a self-authorship point of view. Next, 90% of students say that they would research an unknown topic their friend posted about in order to understand their point of view. This has a lot of implications for how we look at social media and self-authorship, because students are learning from their friends and challenging their own beliefs from what their friends are posting. And without social media, without this form of engagement, they might not have ever had that sort of challenge on their beliefs. Next, 68% of students say that they have been the target of repeated unwanted contact online. This shows some implications for how we develop strategies around intervening with cyberbullying and instances of that. There are some institutions that are actually taking big leaps and bounds for developing policies that actually target how we respond to certain things. And this is really important for how we work here. Good thing to see is that 70% of those students have taken action to block or report that person or account. 12% feel comfortable reaching out to a friend about a concerning post. Students post concerning things. That is very common. If a very low percentage of our students are actually willing to intervene with their friends, who will? So in a lot of ways, we can be developing strategies for students to be empowered, to feel like they can speak up for their friends on social media. 62%, I don't know why that did that, 62% alter or censor their language to avoid potential controversy with their audience. This is interesting because it kind of shows that a lot of our students are recognizing, a fair percentage of our students are recognizing there's a lot of permanence on social media. So what they post could come back to them. So they're being careful with what they put out there. And that's actually really great to see. And the last last point I'll present is 29% of students feel comfortable intervening in instances of cyberbullying directed at their friends. Again, not a very high percentage of students feeling comfortable that they can actually feel empowered to intervene in instances where their with their friends are being targeted. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to step in and make some change. And this brings me to the end, some suggestions. I explore these in much more detail in my full paper, and I have a lot more in the presentation, if the questions go that way, to show actually some ways to do some of these things. So I suggest creating accessible social media policies and marketing strategies. I've looked all over UMass websites and marketing and advancement pages and can't really find anything that helps me understand the ways in which we respond to social media issues, or even how people are supposed, or faculty, administrators, students are supposed to post online professionally, or under the guise of representing the institution. Also creating marketing strategies that focus on engagement practices, not just marketing so that we just push out information, but actually finding ways, creating campaigns that have incentives so that people are wanting to be engaged with our social media presence. Looking into digital identity development, I've done a lot of work creating my own digital identity as a human being. I even got to do it, I've been able to do it with the NASPA TKC Twitter account that I run, the SA GradMod account, where I created kind of a very loud perspective that this account has. And it's been able to work wonders for our student affairs grad student community, which I was able to double the followership within just a year. I took over the account with about 1,100 followers, and now it has 2,600 by doing a lot of different things, including starting like chats that brings people together every week, which is a really cool way to learn about your colleagues as well. But when you're developing your digital identity, it's most important to remember that from an institutional perspective, you have to be authentic. You have to recognize that students are going to see through things. So you have to be very particular with how you create the language that you use and the identity that you create. This is my favorite thing. This is the best way, I think, that you can actually create that authentic self through social media. Utilize undergraduate students to create a social media engagement team. Some institutions are doing this already, using student bloggers, using students to live tweet events. It's really effective because our students are really good at social media. I don't know if people have checked out Yik Yak or even like Twitter, anything. Our students are really good at organizing through social media, so use them. This is also a huge professional development opportunity for them, because it's not just giving them free reign of an account, but teach them how to use it professionally and with a good voice, develop a voice through it as well. Because social media doesn't just happen. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes developing a lot of different working pieces to make something actually engaging for students. It takes making a plan and knowing your audience in a lot of ways as well. I would also suggest creating a RAP, a residential academic program, or some graduate or undergraduate courses that focus on social media issues. Learning how social media, the permanence of social media on campuses, and even some of the social justice implications that social media has really developed in our world. Because it's really created, especially with a lot of the issues going on throughout this entire school year around Black Lives Matter, social media has taken over the way our students even view social justice issues. So a lot of these ways you can get marketing students in there, get communication students in there, get education students in there, and learning about these things early in their college experience, early in their development. And lastly, educate resistant faculty and administrators. People of my generation, millennial students, have grown up in the digital age. So I completely understand the hesitance of getting involved with social media from the perspective of someone who did not grow up with those things. However, there have been a lot of faculty members across the country who have been utilizing social media in very effective ways, and actually have done it in some ways of getting rid of like email in some ways, so that they can actually have engagements that are authentic with their students, and even using their student population to engage each other, so that they're learning in that arena, which is one that they understand. Meeting our students where we are is really a big part of this education as well. And probably can't read those last two words, but this is pulled from a faculty member at Penn State who did a whole year, I think it was a year or semester long project with the students where they used Twitter. That was their like discussion board. And that was like the entire, that's where they were suggested to do all that conversation. And he found that engaging with students in this public way made students more comfortable to ask him and to ask their fellow classmates for help. Because it's creating this willingness, this trust in your community that you can actually talk about these things.
In 140 characters.
In 140 characters. Oh, you can do like one of 2, 1 of 6, 1 of 53, Patton Oswalt. And lastly, this is where I'll conclude. Meeting students where they are is really where social media is. That's where social media is. That's where our students are. Our students are going to continue to evolve with or without us. Are we with them or against them? That's my big question. And thank you for that. And then questions? I'm sure we have plenty of them.
All right. Thanks, Craig.
Hey, thanks.
So we're going to go to Kate first for questions.
I'm hot.
First, a comment, that UMass Proud thing, every time I see a poster, it irritates me.
It's sad, right?
For the same reason.
And
It's
there are
like,
videos of it.
It's so goofy.
Yeah.
Visually, I agree with you. It looks great, and every
yeah.
time I see it, it grates my soul.
Mm-hmm.
So I have very many questions. Let me see. So who's doing this well?
Oh, we're going to get right into the meat of it. All right. All right. So let me get back over here because he's kind of intriguing. So, oh yeah, my confidence is we can get to those if you want to. All right. So examples of positive social media engagement. There are going to be some people shouted out in this one. Sorry, I'm getting very warm, so I'm wearing flannel if you can't tell at home, so it's kind of warm, and Massachusetts just got spring, so we're learning how to live in the warmth again. So some examples of positive social media engagement. A lot of people in student affairs are utilizing social media very well, and one of which I am very proud to know Dr. Emery Klotz, who is now the Dean of Students at New York Institute of Technology. She also worked at Oregon State University while I was there. And Anne-Marie, when she hit the ground running when she got to New York Institute of Technology, because she instituted this hashtag, NYIT did that. So students can post pictures of them being proud of their institution in any way possible. They'll get a shirt, they'll get recognition by their institution, and it gets sent out even by her. And she has, I think, somewhere around 4,000 followers, which is pretty great for our field. So she's developed this this campaign that really makes students look forward to utilizing the social media of NYIT. There's also, I think it's Blue Thursdays, so students wearing blue or anyone wearing blue on Thursdays, tweet it out, post it out, and the institution will engage, and they give away like $50 gift cards to the bookstore for those sorts of things. So money is a factor in here if you want to create some forms of incentives. I also have one of my favorite accounts to follow, just because they're funny and hilarious, is the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is actually ran by an alum of the campus who has developed an incredible digital identity for their actual UW-Madison account. And so he tweets in some very hilarious ways. I'll read this. So a student tweets at UW-Madison, Wisconsin, for the first time in 5 years, UW-Madison course catalog was released, and I have no interest in looking at it. So his response as UW-Madison is, "You make me sad," from Monty Python. A lot of humor is in the UW-Madison account. Also, they send out a tweet early in the morning. "How's our late night library crew doing? Don't join up with the hashtag UW Sunrise Club if you can help it." Then they posted a picture. Then a student responds, "Nap time." And then the university responds with, "We never said it'd be easy. Snooze bar, keeping the dream alive." Again, a lot of humor to create this personality of their actual account. And I talked to Nate, who runs their account, because I was really interested in how he actually got the approval to do some hilarious things like this. And he's like, well, we have a fun campus, so we should mirror that.
So is he a
social
full-time staff member?
Yes, he is.
And is that his primary focus?
Yes. He so Twitter, I think he manages a lot of their accounts, but they also have other people who specialize on different accounts, because that's actually a lot of ways that I would suggest to utilize the undergrads. Because if you know a student that's really good at Instagram, one of my students on that Ready for Bedtime Players is like a celebrity on Instagram, which is really weird to learn when we like go places and then people run into him like, all right, so if I were making my team, you would be on Instagram, and then you would be on Twitter. Like, so noticing people's strengths with certain platforms, again, students aren't using them in the same ways, so we should use them differently. So this one makes me really happy. UW-Madison makes me nervous, like OMG. And this wasn't even tagged at them. This was just, they probably have a search that looks for anything with Madison. And so they respond with, deep breaths, we're here for you if you need anything. That makes me smile. Thank you. That's wonderful. That's creating a lot of this trust early on before that student even gets to the campus. One other dude, one of my favorite human beings, Paul Gordon Brown. We just presented at NASPA on many of these things already that I've already presented on. But he has a website, higheredtechbootcamp.com, which I can strongly suggest for the part of my suggestions where I talk about educating faculty members, educating resistant administrators who are wanting to do this work, because he has a lot of great information on this site. And he's actually now the interim acting dean of students at FIT in New York as well. So he's also a digital dean. So he's really spearheading a lot of these conversations, and I'm really glad that he asked me to present with him at NASPA, which was a really cool opportunity as well. Also live stream. So I think that's the, oh, and one other thing, I did touch on this already from my own perspective, creating creating digital identity on an account, is the SA GradMod account that I run through NASPA Technology Knowledge Community. I'll be giving it up soon, which is kind of sad. But we created this, I wanted to create connections with fellow grad students that are doing student affairs work, because we've wanted to create our network of colleagues in our way, in our generation's way, which is through social media. So I devised this chat similar to the SA chat conversations that happen every Thursday, but we felt that undergrads weren't getting their voice heard as well. So I said, we're gonna do our own, and we're gonna do it on our time. And we did, and it's worked, and it's been really effective, and it actually makes it so that when we come to conferences or we go to visit other campuses, we have colleagues to hang out with. Like, I'm not alone when I go to conferences. I flew to NASPA by myself and was there and was never really alone. So that was a really cool experience to get to have and to get to run this account. And I will be turning it over for new ventures, but it was really cool and fun while it happened. So I don't know where this is going to lead next. All right, that's just going to be there.
So Kate, any other questions?
I have some other questions, but let's.
All right.
Let's.
So we'll go to Sarah next so that we can make sure if we have time for your questions.
So you talked about a social media success, but the stakes are very high for social media fails. Companies have lost millions over an inappropriate tweet or somebody responding, somebody getting hot under the collar who's speaking for the whole company. These are the environments where somebody is essentially speaking on behalf of an institution.
Yes.
And so what are some examples where this has really not gone well? And what have been the stakes that have, what has been the consequence of that?
So as far as seeing some backfires, I have seen that there was, I forget what institution it was, I think it was in Florida. There was an article, or there was a research article that I read. It was the institution closed because of a tweet or something. I think that's the headline. And they posted something along the lines of, kind of like, I think it was someone in charge of their account was patronizing a student. They're patronizing a student. And that's the way it came off. Because with social media, tone is everything. Because you can't really pick up on sarcasm unless, like, part of my digital identity is when I'm doing all caps, I'm basically being sarcastic, but I built that up. But sometimes people misread that. So, but what happened is in a lot of ways, what I think ended up happening in that institution was there was a person was, I think, fired, and there was actually like an accreditation issue where I think they almost lost that section, that part of their staff, because they realized, well, if you're gonna act this way around all students or to anyone, we really shouldn't be taking these risks at all. And that creates a lot of fear, and that creates a lot of unwillingness to actually continue to do these sorts of strategies that work if you do them well. But yeah, you're completely right. A lot of these things are high stakes, and they fail a lot. And they even fail in outside of higher ed. I think most notably there have been CEOs, I forget her, I just read an article about her and I just forgot her name, but she was a CEO of a company and she tweeted out, going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. And you're the CEO of a company.
She wasn't a CEO, but she was she worked for a branding company.
Yeah, branding company, and she was higher up though.
She was mid-level.
Yeah, but when you represent anyone, that's why Nike, like I have friends who work at Nike, they're not even allowed to say they work at Nike on their social media. Like, that's a thing. So some institutions would, in some ways, institutions could look at that and say, well, then we don't want our employees saying that they work here. But a lot of times you're wanting to develop these sorts of things. So it takes that sort of like specialized training, like I was saying. Whereas like if you were to put a student in charge, you don't just give them free reign of the accounts and say, tweet what you would normally tweet if you were on a Sunday morning, I don't know, just lounging around watching Netflix. You have very intentional conversations with them. You explain to them, this is the presence we want to create at our campus. This is how we can create a voice together. I was a creative writing minor, and so a lot of creating voice takes time. And so if your institution's wanting to create a specific voice, kind of like UW-Madison did, that doesn't just happen overnight either. It takes a lot of time and brainstorming and discussion so that you can avoid those sorts of responses. But then again, like we're seeing students posting a lot of troubling things on Yik Yak, and I've intervened, a lot of us have intervened. It's also having very intentional conversations about what those responses look like, and actually potentially planning a lot of those things out so that we're consistent, so that people aren't stepping on each other's toes, so that people aren't posting more troubling things and actually making it somewhat of a successful intervention, because I think social media intervention is really powerful. I've done it a lot, especially because I follow a lot of like punk bands and stuff like that. There's a lot of different kinds of performances of masculinity when people post on certain things. And there's this one feminist punk band that I follow called War on Women, and they have 3 women in their band, and they're very outward that they are feminists. And so there was something posted about their band, like a bunch of dudes were just downright being disrespectful to women. And so me and a couple other people were just like, you don't do that here. And just like completely educating them on, you know, the world's changing, man. A lot of these comments you're making are going to exist for a while. Be careful what you're putting out there. So there's a lot of potential for creating those intervention strategies. And yeah. I don't know if that completely answered your question, but I said a lot of words.
Any other questions?
So what would these policies look like?
Oh yeah. I don't even know if I have a slide for that, but there are a lot of institutions that have policies similar to this enacted already. Iowa State, Syracuse, Duke, University of Toronto, Oregon State has my alma mater, Go Beavs, has a very extensive look at what social media policies look like. And really what it comes down to is being detailed about, well, if a student posts something that's like a suicidal ideation, what kinds of things would we respond with? Resources. We give them some phone numbers. We could, from an institutional point of view or perspective, or from an administrator at that institution, intervening and saying, hey, you're not alone here. And then following up and being like, here's some resources, here's this, but actually writing those things out and actually putting it on paper so that we're like, okay, so I came across a student who was being sexist towards a female student in their resident hall. So that's an instance where people working in residence life, or even an RA or someone, it kind of takes interpersonal training to a different level. It puts it in the cyber way. We take some of the things that we use with people in this physical reality and put it into the digital reality. But a lot of the policies just really need to put it down so people have that like handbook or guide or something to go to, something to reach from, so that they can actually be consistent with that. Because if we have one administrator posting one thing, or one person intervening in one way and another person intervening in a different way, we're sending different messages, and we don't want that. So a lot of other policies also focus around branding guidelines, as well as, and I think UMass has some branding guidelines on their pages. But those are really the bare essentials. But also creating strategies that involve like engagement, or actually looking at what kinds of campaigns can we create? Who can we learn from? Who's doing this well? Kind of like my suggestions. Like, you can learn from what a lot of institutions are doing and put it into the concept of your own campus. Yeah.
All right. So since this is the first, to my knowledge at least, live streamed integrative presentation ever, I want to make sure that we have time for questions coming in from Twitter. So I want to go to one of those next.
Do it.
All right. Someone asks, what about students who are not on social media or don't have access to technology readily? How will this impact their sense of inclusion?
Yeah. What was great with the technology knowledge community, I was able to help support the creation of this year's webinar, which was on, someone just slid something under the door. Says go Crig. Hey, thanks. So with the, this is an old school email. It says go Crig. I used to pass notes underneath my doors in school. But I helped creating the topic for this year's webinar from the technology knowledge community, which was on accessibility and social media. And so a lot of times students, and being completely aware, like I was raised as I'm a first gen college student from a low SES family, didn't really have a computer until I got to college. Yeah, like my family had one, but it was bad, and I didn't really learn how to use it until I got to college. But and so keeping those students in our thoughts is really important, because if they're wanting to be engaged, if they're wanting to have this experience of wanting this sort of inclusion, because some students, I have students who just stay off of social media. It's not necessarily that they're not interested in it, they just don't want, some of them are just afraid of information getting out there, which is real. So if a student is wanting to do these things but doesn't have access to like a smartphone, which is a very consistent manner, we found in our survey like 99% of students are using their mobile phone to access everything. It's giving them the support of knowing that if they're wanting to be engaged in these platforms, especially for class needs, utilizing library resources, library like loaned laptops. There are some high schools that have even done iPad loan programs for students that are from low SES backgrounds, to help them learn how to interact with the digital world that we live in. And so students that might not have access to those sorts of things for whatever reason, it's really trying to get at what they're wanting to get from social media. It's not really what I would want them to get from social media, or whomever else would want to get from social media. It's actually trying to like ask them, well, what are you wanting to use social media for? What interests you in it? Because ultimately, I can say, yeah, social media is great, go do it. But for someone who's never really used it, or seen it be effective. They just see it as another thing that just distracts people. So it would mean starting that conversation and then potentially finding ways to get them access to it. And I think on a lot of college campuses, we have ways of supporting those students. We should just actually follow up and do it.
So, Benita, do you have a question for Craig? You don't have to. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Victoria?
I'm okay.
All right. We'll go back to Twitter.
Yay!
Craig, why do you think so few students are willing to reach out to struggling friends online? And how do we help change that?
Yeah. See, I think that this is a very big developmental thing. I'm not sure if I would have really reached out to some of my friends when I was a freshman, sophomore, maybe even a junior in college, because I wasn't at that confidence level where I felt that what I had to say even meant anything to my friends in some ways. Some of my lasting relationships actually felt like some of the longer relationships I could feel like I could reach out to them. But sometimes things also get lost in the ether in social media sometimes, especially Facebook algorithms. I'll lose things. I won't even see things my friends post, then I'll come back and see, oh, what happened to you? You broke your leg or whatever 3 weeks ago? I didn't even see that. So there are a lot of things that we miss, but a lot of times when it comes to not being comfortable intervening, I think it comes down to the fact that our students sometimes, from what I've experienced, our students have a hard time even like talking to each other when they have issues, and that's also a big struggle. I don't think it's exclusively a social media issue. I think it's a cultural issue. A lot of people don't talk anymore, and the fact that the fact that I have a cell phone and I hardly call anyone is kind of reminiscent of that, and shows a lot of the issues where when I reach out to my friends, I don't actually reach out to them on social media either. In some ways, I reach out to them by text, or I'll send them an email or something, which we were kind of blurry on whether email fit into this, so it was blurry. But that might actually account to why some students aren't intervening on social media. They might be intervening in other ways. So, like I said, students might be are definitely posting some troubling things, but maybe students aren't actually able to recognize what are concerning posts at what point in their day, in their life, to actually feel like they should intervene. Because some students might just be hesitant to actually say something because they don't want to blow something out of proportion. But then again, their friend put it online for people to see. So yeah,
So
that
I
one's
would
complicated.
posit that the responsibility for an institution would be slightly different.
Yes.
So along those lines, the consequences of failing to intervene, there's a university official type of social media account, a concerning post is missed, or it's not responded to in a timely way because the person who's in charge of it is away for the weekend. And all the social media that's going out has been pre-lined up on Hootsuite. It looks really interactive. It looks like there's someone there because there's stuff coming out.
For sure.
But there's actually somebody's, post.
Ideating online.
Right. And there's a failure to respond. So what do you see as that kind of, scenario for institutions?
That one's a tricky one. Because that, like you said, there are a lot of risks involved with this. My main suggestion, and again, this kind of comes with an ideal world, it would be that if I actually just read something where millennials are the most likely to not really care about work-life balance. They care about work-life blend. So we're more comfortable even doing work from home or whatever. So my suggestion in an ideal world is having someone who is willing to look at those things online on off hours or on weekend hours. If someone, because I get alerts all the time in general for a lot of things that happen on social media. Even the major accounts that I manage like studentaffairs.com. We have a big following. I get a lot of updates and even some concerning things as well. So it's almost creating not necessarily an expectation, but an acceptance to our rules when it comes to certain sorts of responses. Like, if a student commits suicide over the weekend, and that has a lot of implications for your work, regardless of day or time or manner, I'd imagine. So if something is brought to us or brought to someone who's managing these accounts, it can also be very beneficial to kind of like, all right, I can set something aside to try to help out here if I can. Or having someone like an on-duty social media intervener in some ways. Like, that can actually be a reality. I know it's kind of a far-fetched idea, but in the world we're developing right now,
It's like part of the on-call process.
exactly, it could be part of an on-call process where you're actually, there could be, because I mean in Hootsuite and TweetDeck and things like that, you can have columns specifically for certain buzzwords or certain phrases. And if any of those things kind of pop up, there you go. Or even if a student sends it to you. I would also suggest, this kind of goes into where I feel very strongly that students can be doing a lot of this with almost without us. If we actually do go back to my idea of the wrap or the courses, helping students acknowledge that they have some power here, that they have the power and can be empowered to intervene with their friends and discuss these things with their friends on social media if necessary. And that comes again with some training and some discussion and some seeing where things have failed and noticing the warning signs and some, depending on what the posts are about.
So my question for you would be, universities are entering or well into a time of increasing budget scarcity.
Yeah.
Right? This is the world that we live in, and we're also in an environment where we're all about accountability and performance metrics and all that fun stuff, right? How do you make the case for social media being something that tips to the top of the list, right? How is it that an institution either justifies or comes to adopt social media as one of the key planks for how it moves forward?
I knew this was going to be something you asked.
All right, and let me make it really concrete.
Yeah.
How do we make the decision to hire someone to manage social media accounts instead of a counselor to work with students in crisis, or a English professor who will teach undergraduates, or someone to do sexual health education?
For sure.
Yeah.
And I'd argue that it couldn't be one person. There's no way that one person
No.
could do this.
And I've
You
learned
need
that firsthand trying to do a lot of this by myself. It's very, very difficult. And that work-life blend is basically where my geo contract blurs. I think mine more than probably anyone else's, because I do a lot of social media work. But what my response to that would be, marketing is changing. Communications is changing. Whereas institutions at one point, before Facebook, before 10 years ago, before MySpace, I just said MySpace in 2015. Wow. Before the existence of like true social media platforms, institutions went to their websites. And that's where they put a lot of effort and making sure that everything was there that students needed.
We didn't do that very well either.
And that's also true. So institutions have kind of always had some struggles with websites, with marketing, with communications. But where I see it changing is social media is becoming that platform. And because that's where students are willing to go for their news. I cover a big section of my literature review is where students prefer to get their information, and they're getting it on social media. They're getting it from their phones as they're walking from class to class. They're not going to their university website. They're going to where it is that's most accessible for them. So in my mind, a priority being a social media director or manager would mainly, my main suggestion would be that they would be actually on the front lines of student engagement, and not just involvement. Involvement's good, it's a good start, but actually having ways in which we engage students and develop this personality, develop these ways that go further than just a website, that go further than just a blog, that go further than just posters on a wall. We can create actual relationships with our students, and having a position and putting funding aside for this sort of work, as you can see, students engage in it, like especially at NYIT, a lot of, and at UMadison, if you put a lot of effort behind it, students will actually respond, but if you half-ass it, you're not gonna get much out of it. Having a presence and actually doing something with it are like different things.
So we have time for just one more question.
All right.
So mine's a little bigger, I guess, in terms of, you've talked about the millennial generation and how you're different and all that sort of thing. And I've been reading quite a bit about neuroscience and sort of multitasking and the fact that, your brain actually isn't different than my brain. And there's increasing amounts of, I think the stuff, clearly you can do a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But I think there are also some real drawbacks in terms of brain development and the myths of multitasking, that you really can't switch the way you think you can, and the impact of sort of these constant messages and things like that. So how do you help? I guess what I'm urging is some caution in terms of helping students also realize that sometimes you can't do it all. That you need breaks. Your brain needs time to be quiet.
Mm-hmm. You know me, I love being quiet, which is why braces have been hard, or a blessing in disguise, I guess. But I was actually having a conversation about this with one of my friends last summer, because he's like, Craig, I think you're literally the only person I know that can actually function as a multitasker. And I didn't really get it, but that's because I try to do everything. I try, and I do not succeed all the time in that. But it's something that I think about a lot, because that's how I function. I have a hard time focusing. I have ADHD, and that actually has a lot of, just instead of being a buzzword for kids that can't behave, it actually does affect the way I think and the way my brain works. That goes beyond just being a millennial. That's not even, my brain's just weird. But I think when it comes down to social media playing a major role in what you're talking about, multitasking and task switching, students are getting flooded with information, flooded with news, flooded with chaos in the world. So there's not really that opportunity to relax. And when they go to relax, they go to Netflix. They go to putting more stimuli in their brain instead of, doing what I used to do and read. I used to do that. I used to read once a couple of degrees ago. So it really, I think social media has in some ways created a major detriment to the way students actually do process things and the way that they do prioritize their time and prioritize the way in which they actually focus on homework or focus on keeping in touch with their family or focus on taking time for themselves. There is a lot of, and I'm pretty sure, a lot of research on social media is still very new. And I think that would be a really great research study. And I know that Ray Junko actually he was a big social media researcher. He just put out a big old book that I helped, reviewed with him at NASPA. But he actually did just do a study on multitasking and Facebook specifically, kind of the struggles of that, and showing multitasking is very, very difficult to actually. No one can really be successful at it. And I think a lot of social media can be a detriment for that. Whereas like you said, it can do some cool things, but it can also be kind of a crutch in the way some students use it in their lives as well. Yeah, and it can also create other issues because of permanence and spreadability and all the things that actually can like damage people's reputations and institutions' reputations. So a lot of those things definitely comes down to actually recognizing developmental issues and how to actually educate on how to use these things effectively rather than saying, I'm gonna go use social media. Doesn't really work that well. So yeah, I think that kind of.
All right, and so unfortunately we're out of time,
Oh,
so we can't continue the conversation.
sure.
Do you want to put any like closing thoughts out there before we close down the live stream?
Thank you all for watching. I'm just like looking over at my tweet deck and I see the column that's really sweet to me that really actually makes me feel very supported. Especially because I had this idea with Zeke. I told him back in September, I was like, I want to live stream my thesis. And you're like, all right, we can try it. See what we can do. I figured the medium was right. Everything was, it just made sense. So I'm really glad that it worked out. I'm going to try to get to my last actual screen. So I guess my last final bits of words and ideas. Oh yeah, this is the book that Rachel Go wrote, if I wasn't clear. Engaging students through social media. But I'm really thankful you all came, and I care a lot about this stuff. A lot of it's still very unproven, which makes it kind of hard. But I think if we actually put some effort into it, there can be some really cool things done with it. Yeah.
All right.